All right. Hello and welcome to Subtle Body series. This is the last of the three, and this is mantra, which I would say is probably my most favorite of all three. We did meditation and we did pranayama. And so really mantra and pranayama are different forms of meditation. And mantra specifically is translated from Sanskrit. There's two words in the word mantra. There's manas, which is mind, and tra, which is instrument. And fun fact, tantra is also another instrument, and it's an instrument of expansion. This is an instrument for the mind. And so the idea of mantra meditation is that we give the mind some sounds to focus on so that we can, hopefully, the greater part of ourselves, or the part that we don't identify with, right? The part that is unchanging, spirit, soul, God, insert word of choice. By giving the mind something to do, then we're able to kind of step back and feel ourselves in our totality. So what I'd love to do today is I'd love us to explore different kinds of mantras. Always, especially those of us who are teachers and even those of us who are practitioners, we want to embody our practice before we share it. And mantra has been a part of my practice literally since the beginning. Every single teacher I've had always incorporates mantra into the practice. Usually at the beginning, I took up harmonium because all my teachers did, but it's not really my thing because I feel like I can't do 5 things at once, play the music and then sing. So I give props to all my teachers who can do that. It's not my thing, or else I would have pulled that out for you. So, but I think it's still a very powerful tool to just chant. And there's different ways of chanting. One of the biggest components of doing it out loud versus inside, I find specifically for us women, is that it opens up the throat chakra. And the throat chakra is the chakra that deals with communication, obvious, but it also deals with integrity and to connect to our power and our right to be here. For various reasons, our voices can tend to be dampened. And so a lot of times we can be a bit nervous about sharing our voice. Not all of us, but some of us. And I find that finding your voice, and especially being able to speak and sing loudly, regardless of whether or not you're a good singer, because I will tell you I'm not a good singer, but I love to sing. It's important for us to connect to our voice, A, through just the sound, so that B, when we communicate to the world around us, we do it with a sense of confidence and a sense of appreciation, hopefully, for our own voices. And I'll say that is what mantra, one of the biggest things mantra has given me. Now, that being said, 2 of my teachers are singers. I am not a singer. And so I was always nervous at first to share my voice. But when you're in a room of 80 people, you can totally belt it out, and you don't have to worry about anybody noticing because nobody's noticing. So I say all this because I really encourage us to share, those of us who are teachers, if it is in your practice and you feel passionate about it, for us to get our people to sing. Singing is so important. I remember one of my teachers saying way back when, there was a time when we all sang, culturally we sang as communities. And now we go to concerts and we pay people to sing so that we can feel the joy of singing without having to do it. And so the idea of chanting, of doing mantra together, is bringing our voices back together. Okay. So in the tradition of yoga, we usually chant in Sanskrit, which can bring up a lot of things for everybody. First thing that it can bring up is that most of us are not Indian, nor did we grow up with Sanskrit as a language that we were hanging out with. So it feels literally foreign to us. And I think that is, I was kind of talking about this, I think, in the meditation workshop last time. I think that actually is an added bonus for us who didn't grow up with Sanskrit, because we have no attachment to the sounds. Okay. If we were to chant in English, which we will as well, it's wonderful, but we all have, those of us who are English as our first language, or even as our second language, we have a relationship to what the words mean. So we can get caught up in the meaning itself versus just getting caught up in the sound. Okay. And one thing that is so cool about Sanskrit specifically is that it's a form of what we call nada yoga, nada being sound. Nada yoga is how vibration affects our body. And there's this wonderful Japanese scientist, Dr. Kyoto. I don't know if you've seen this. It was in the What the Bleep Do We Know, as well as it was like definitely circulating when I feel like the internet first started way back when, is Dr. Kyoto did these amazing experiments on water molecules and how water is affected by sound. And so there were some water molecules that he sang to, and some water molecules that he screamed at, and some water molecules that he played really loud music and soft music and spoke lovingly to them and everything. And then he took pictures of all the water molecules before and after being affected by sound. And it was cool because the ones that he spoke lovingly to or sang to, the water molecules looked like snowflakes. And then the other molecules where he yelled at and gave them negative energy, they actually look fractured. I can put that article, I can send that out when I send out an email later with all of this, if you haven't read it before. So cool. And why I'm saying all this is because we are made up of 75% water, if not more, depending upon how hydrated we are. So we are literally water molecules walking around being affected by sound. Okay. And that's why specifically in the Yoga Sutras, right, there's one sutra near the beginning that talks about how important it is to be very aware of who we would surround ourselves with and what situations we put ourselves in, because it energetically affects us, regardless of whether or not we're interacting with it, it affects us. Okay. And so if we want to create states of ease in body and mind, we want to the best of our ability, because we don't always have the power to, but to the best of our ability, be able to put ourselves in situations that are calming. So coming back to Nada yoga. So the idea of Sanskrit is when they created it, they thought about how sound affects our body on a molecular level. And they weren't scientists, they didn't have microscopes. This is like way back when, but they observed, how did it make me feel? And so a lot of the mantras that are still chanted today, right, are essentially, I think of them like little medicine. They're like little prescriptive sounds or prescriptions to make us feel a particular way. And so we'll play with this in terms of bija mantras, so seed mantras. Bija mantras generally don't actually have a translation. They don't mean anything, like the bija mantras of the chakras or bija mantras of Ganesha or whomever. They don't mean anything, but what they do is they affect you in a particular way. So the biggest thing I'd love you to observe as we practice together today is, how does it make me feel? After I do it, how does it make me feel? And so if you do have pen and paper nearby, I'd love you, after we finish each mantra, for you to write down just a couple of words. You can be like Ganesha mantra or whatever mantra we're doing, and it made me feel this way. Okay. And the fun and cool part, I'm sure those of us who've been working with mantra for a long time, is depending on how I'm feeling, I'm affected differently. So it's not only the prescription of the sounds themselves, but it's also what I'm showing up to my mat with. Okay. So those are things that I'd love you to kind of experiment and explore in your own body as we go through these mantras. And we're going to chant in English and we're going to chant in Sanskrit. And I want you to just kind of observe how the difference of those. Okay. Different ways that we can chant mantras is we can chant them, we can sing them. The other way is that we can speak them. And another way is that we can mutter them. My teacher would call it like under the breath. And then the fourth way is through silence. And they all do different things. But I do encourage those of us who are teachers, and if it's passionate for you, I encourage you to get your people to sing. It's so good for us. I'm like, we all, I think, especially I would just say right now, and I feel like it just doesn't seem to be getting better anywhere in the world, sing. Okay, so that we can celebrate and be together with our voices. The other cool thing about singing that happens is, I'm sure you already know this, but after you spend 20 minutes with somebody, energetically, you meet each other. So the way that your cells are vibrating, okay, after being together for 20 minutes, they'll start to vibrate at the same frequency. They've proven this, okay? But when we sing, it happens faster. So that's why, like, one of the biggest reasons why we Om at the beginning of class, knowingly or unknowingly, is we're getting everybody to be like, okay, gang, in we come. We're all going to kind of meet, so that ideally we'll just kind of start to kind of land in the same place, so that as we ride the wave of the asanas, of the poses, that we can ride it together. Like I think of it like we're getting on one airplane before we like take off. We have to like sing, we come together, and then off we go, right? Okay. So with that in mind, the most obvious sound that we usually start with is the sound of Om. And the Om is generally spelled A-U-M, and it's 3 sounds, ah, o, And the cool part about Om is that it represents the three parts of what we call the cycle: the beginning, the middle, and the end. Okay. And so when we chant the sound of ah, and you'll know this, right? This is generally, if you've had kids or been around kids, the first sound that kids make is ah, when they're exploring their voices. It's the first sound we make, and it is the beginning. So we chant ah, and then O is that which sustains, and then that which transcends or dissolves, right? And so when we chant the sound of Om, we're chanting the 3 parts of the cycle, but the other part is, right, and the quantum physicists have proven this, is that everything in the universe vibrates. Now, this part I don't know is true, but I want to believe it, is that everything vibrates to the sound of Om.